Item 1, declarations of interest. Any members have any declarations? No, none. I've got a couple of apologies. Councillor Williams and Councillor Mitchell. And Councillor Mitchell has asked that Councillor Robinson take up his position, and I've used my discretion as chair to allow that.
Thank you.
Okay. The minutes of the previous meeting, item 2. Do we have any comments? Minutes. I sign this as a true record of the last meeting. Yeah. Sound. We have no questions to the committee, and so we can go straight to item 4, closing accounts update. And closing of that account updates is coming from
me.
Mark.
Yes.
Of course. Sorry, Mark.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, councillors. I get the lucky slot tonight because I start off tonight's committee meeting with some good news, which is a really good thing to do. So, councillors will be aware that we've been working on our 2021 statement of accounts process for quite some time. The committee had agreed a delegation under the circumstances to sign off those accounts. I'm very happy to confirm that the statement of accounts for 2021 have been signed off on Monday this week under delegation, following meetings with the chair previously and with the director of finance and with the external audit partner and their representatives. Those accounts are unqualified. That marks the second year in a row that we have unqualified accounts, marking a significant improvement in the operation quality of those processes and quality of the accounts. So it's a really, really good news story. And I absolutely congratulate both my team and the external auditors team in making that achievement. It's been hard work, working through, and we're really reaping the benefits from planning that's happened over more than the last 2 or 3 years to get us to this position. So it builds a greater and enhanced level of financial confidence for us as an organisation. So I'm very pleased to confirm to committee that has now happened. There'll be a little bit more updates if you would consider this item with the next item with the external auditors update as well, in a bit of context as well. But just for that point, I would just make that confirmation. So it's really good news. Moving forward, the 21-22 accounts and the 22-23 accounts, they're both completed. They're in draft form. They have been published on our website. We are currently just coming to the end of a public inspection period for our 22-23 accounts. They are published and ready to be used looking forward. Additionally to that, we have started work with our new auditors, KPMG. We've been doing quite a lot of work with them over the last couple of months around confirming what our up-to-date policies are and walkthroughs on our control processes and our operational processes. So the work has started with KPMG, really about preparation work, getting to know your clients, getting to understand and forming their plan, forming their view when they actually start to audit our 23-24 accounts. We've just tripped into April now, so we're just closing the management accounts down for the last financial year, and we're doing that in good order, which is we're enjoying the benefits of having successfully implemented the changed financial system, which enables faster close down and faster preparation of data. So we're on target to produce in draft accounts a lot quicker than what we've done in the past as well for the 23-24 year. There's a couple of other things I would like to just bring bring committee's attention to. One is a national position on audit. This is a national position in England. There have been, it's well documented, severe challenges in resourcing and performing outstanding audits across the board. There are hundreds of accounts across the board that have been somewhat delayed through a number of different reasons. So the government have been consulting on how to bring this position more up to date. So they've issued a consultation which effectively sets a number of backstop dates for a number of outstanding accounts. They have to have a period by which that an audit opinion has to be formed, even if that is the case that no work has been done or that there are issues with that. But the consultation is meant to set a framework that will bring the whole local government audit process more up to date, more in a timely manner. And it sets a number of future backstop dates where it can bring that work into line. So we've reviewed our position. In one respect, it doesn't affect us in terms of the preparation of the accounts. We are still going to prepare our accounts as fast as we can to the best quality, following appropriate code guidance and sit for guidance. What we will inevitably have to do is how do we deal with our 2 years, 21, 22 and 22, 23 audit process to bring them back up to speed? How will that relate to the work of KPMG when they carry forward in that work? And that's still information to come. Perhaps we might hear a bit more on that tonight, but we're waiting for a stepped process to work through. I think the consultation itself will rely on legislation change in the middle of the summer. So that being the case, it will then enable EY to have a position on our outstanding years, and then we move forward and hopefully bring the national position much more up to speed. So there's a lot going on nationally, but I'll just end that locally we've done a huge amount of work, and it's an excellent story both for RBC staff and EY auditor staff as well.
Thank you, Mark, and it's great news, and and the finance team, is owed a lot of credit for this hard work, and yeah. Okay, any questions or for Mark at all on this, or any comments?
Just just a quick comment, just to echo what you said. Really, it's a big achievement. Yeah, good to start with.
Really is.
Such good news.
A lot of very hard work has gone into this. We can see that.
Thank you, Councillor. I wish I could bring the whole team in. Well, I'm just the one in the room. They've done all the hard work.
I wonder whether there's an award somewhere. You never know. We've won a few awards in some of the other departments in the council. Anyway, we're digressing. Let's move on to the recommendations that the committee note the accounts progress and findings to date. We have to note. Okay, thank you very much. Shall we move on to item 5, external auditor update? Again, Mark is in the chair, and I suppose we have Maria in the virtual world.
Indeed, thank you. Hopefully you can hear me. So just to add to the points that Mark's just made, I think the thing I would like to draw out is, I've been involved with auditing the council for many years now, and when I first took on the audit, the processes, the record keeping, and the supporting documentation needed an awful lot of work, and there are a lot of issues around those processes. And the thing that I'm pleased about is that when we've raised issues over the years, the council has not only dealt with the current issue as it is, but they've looked to how can we improve this and make sure this is a sustainable improvement in our record keeping. So I just wanted to make that point, because those of you that have been around over those years, you will know how tricky it has been as we've completed those audits. But there was always that drive to not only fix the current position in those financial statements, but also to make sure that whatever the issue was that was causing that position, that lack of documentation or that lack of support, was dealt with for the future as well. And I think that's the point for me, because we're always looking for that improvement to come through in future years for you. So really pleased to see that the finance team have not only dealt with our questions and challenges as a, yes, we'll respond to them to get the auditor off our back, but they've actually taken a really responsible approach to then saying, and what can we learn from this, and how can we make sure that we get the improvements? So I just wanted to underline that point, because I think that's something that, often when we're very, very busy, we just deal with the here and now query and try and move that on, rather than trying to get the longer term achievement. So that's what I'd like to draw out of the 2021. The other thing I do need to draw out of the 2021 is that on the value for money commentary, we do have two areas that we've identified as weaknesses in arrangements. The first one is around the control account reconciliations and bank reconciliations, but this is again an area that we've seen improve. Just to emphasize, that's for the value for money commentary for 2021, so to 31st of March 21. And yes, we have seen improvements since then, but at that point I needed to report the weaknesses that were in place at that point. And the second area that we have raised weaknesses and arrangements on the value for money commentary are around children's services. And at the time, again, at the point in 2021, the Ofsted reports were still finding issues. Now, clearly, there have been improvements since that point. But again, I do need to raise to you as committee that those are the two areas on the value for money commentary in 2021 where we have raised issues and weaknesses. Aside from that, the audit results report does set out a range of recommendations for continued improvement, and I'm confident now that your finance team will take those forward appropriately. And in many cases, they've already taken the action needed, which is great. But where those actions will play through in future sets of statements, I'm sure we will see that come through. So again, it's a very positive position from my perspective. With regards to 21, 22 and 22, 23, as Mark's quite rightly said, we are now waiting for the end of the consultation of the legislation to give us clarity around what the backstop date will be for those years. In the consultation, it was stated as the 30th of September would be the backstop date. If that's the case, then we'll be looking to see how we move those two audits to a close, so that we can get you back on track and you can crack on with your 23-24 statements with KPMG, and that will get you absolutely bang up to date. So once that legislation is finalised and laid, then we will be able to give you a more clear position on 21, 22 and 22, 23. And I'll ensure that we do that through to you as a committee as those charged with governance. I think that's probably everything I wanted to say, but I'm more than happy to take questions if any of that's not clear.
Thank you, Maria. Any members want to ask a question? So, Councillor Gidley?
Yeah, thanks, Maria. And I mean, referring back to obviously to the earlier report, I mean, I think it is great news that compared with other unitaries and other comparative authorities, we are catching up, and it's quite rather difficult to see quite where we are in the league table, but I think that is a tribute to the work of the team, and also, to be fair, obviously to EY, because obviously they've been guiding you hand on the tiller so that we can improve our processes and speed things up, and by implication as well, obviously hopefully spend a little less money on the audits, because if you get your systems in place you can spend less. And as people who've been on this committee long enough know that this has been a bone of incredible contention. It's been politically contentious. I suppose I sort of return to the politically contentious side, because I'm going to say this. I have to say that this is another, I think this is a failure of government, actually, on the fact that we're having to have this consultation and speed up. You know, the accounts now are going to be sped up. Some won't necessarily, I'm going to ask you whether they're necessarily be qualified, unqualified. What sort of state would the accounts be? Because it appears to me this is a rather dangerous principle that we might be adopting there, that to catch up, there's going to be some shortcuts made in the process. So I suppose I was going a long-winded way of saying, can we have an assurance that's not going to happen with Reading? I know you're waiting for the consultation, but I know in a neighbouring authority this was quite contentious, the idea of what work's going to be carried out and how it's going to be paid for. So you understand from the public's point of view, they can see that we're great for 2021, but then and we're catching up fast with the others. But what sort of, you know, how are those accounts going to be presented? How are they going to be audited? Will they be qualified, unqualified? I think it's a massive problem, and again, it's because of failure of councils. I think in a way lacking the resources to pay the auditors properly, a shortage of auditors, all these things come into play. But it's a pretty sorry picture, actually, if you look at the national picture. I'm on the Fire Authority, and we're a couple of years behind there as well because of that. You know, the lack of resources and goodness knows what else. So, you know what I'm getting at, Maria. So I banged on a bit, but it's concerning, isn't it? Actually.
Well, I think the issue is that there's a number of, and there's been a lot of commentary around the system and the position in the system and the fact that there needs to be a reset of the system, because clearly we can't, and what won't happen is that all of those audits are going to flow through and be delivered, and then we'll catch up, because that's what we've been trying to do since the delay started. Now for Reading it's slightly different, because Reading was one of the audits that the pandemic, Reading had some issues, which is what I was alluding to earlier. And actually Reading's overcome those and is now catching up at a faster pace than some of the ones that were affected by the pandemic. But I think the issue for me is if we say, okay, for every one of those old years, we want to keep delivering the audit, then that takes a lot of resource. Not only, it's not just about audit resource, it's about your finance team's resource as well. And in order to support an audit, it takes a lot of resource out of your teams as well as ours in order to deliver that. Now, if we were going to do the 21-22 audit from now, we probably wouldn't be able to do the full audit and deliver all the work as we should. We probably wouldn't be able to finish that until probably the end of this year, and then we'd be into 22-23 next year, and then so on and so forth. And all that time your team are being used to do that, to support that, while they're also trying to do your budgeting processes and all the other good stuff that your finance team do. And that's why the system reset is there. So the consultation was there to say, okay, if we put a backstop date on 21, 22 and 22, 23, then it's a case of looking at how can we deliver to that backstop date. And the point that you're alluding to is around a disclaimer opinion, where the firms will then say, if we need to do that, and if we need to give an opinion, we won't possibly be able to do the audit. So we'll have to give a disclaimer opinion on those financial statements. And that is a way in which we can move through 21, 22, 22, 23 and get councils back on track to be doing 23, 24 in the current year. And that is ultimately the only way in which that will happen, because you yourselves as a council and as councils nationally, and also us, are not suddenly going to find teams of resources to deliver lots of old audits. So that's ultimately what the consultation was about, that DLUC were obviously leading, and that's really what the kind of system reset is about. So yes, to your point, it would require a different approach to those opinions, and it wouldn't be a 6, 8 month, 12 months audit that was undertaken.
Okay, well, thanks for the clarification, but it's we'll see what we're seeing.
Okay, Councillor Gooding. Any other member?
So I just wanted to ask, is anything going on at the moment, or is it really not worth your while doing anything because you won't be able to complete it, or it might not be needed?
Oh, that's a really good question. Thank you. And it's reminded me of one point that I should have flagged. The one piece of work we are doing is your value for money work. So we're completing the value for money work for 21, 22 and 22, 23. And the reason for that is there is no way of disclaiming that work or doing anything else with it. So the only way to deal with that is to do the work itself. So we've pushed forward on that work. And the reason we've done that is so that when the legislation lands, if it does then have a backstop date of the end of September or October or whatever the consultation and the legislation ends up with, we want to make sure that everything we need to have done is done. So we are delivering your value for money work for 21, 22 and 22, 23. And that's really important for Reading because of those two areas of weakness in arrangements that I talked about earlier. It's important for you that we do that work and we reflect your position to the 31st of March 23, because the position to the 31st of March 21 had those two weaknesses in. And I think it's absolutely right that we report a more up-to-date position for you. So we are completing your value for money work.
See no further indications. Thank you very much, Maria, for your input, and yeah, hopefully we will have very good value for money going forward.
Thank you very much. If it's okay with you, Chairman, I'll leave the meeting at this point, if that's
Absolutely.
okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Right.
Thank you.
Okay. Recommended actions that the committee notes EY's updates for 2020-2021 financial statements. That the committee notes EY's updates for future work. Are we all happy to agree to note those comments? Yes. Thank you. Okay. Item 6. Internal Audit Investigations Quarterly Update Report, Q4, and that's David Paul.
Thank you, Chair. So this is my standard report, just giving you a high-level overview of the audits we've completed in the last quarter. So it's quarter 4 of the 23-24 financial year. As always, the details in Appendix 1. That will give you a breakdown of the title of the audit, the number and types of recommendations made, and the assurance opinion with a brief summary of what we identified. There are also further appendices, which are the 2 audits where we gave a negative assurance opinion information, really. So just in summary, a total of 4 reviews were finalised during this period, 2 receiving a positive opinion and 2 receiving a negative opinion. We also issued 2 advisory reports that we didn't provide an assurance opinion, and 1 government grant was signed off. So looking at the positive opinions, Maria in the previous report talked about the value for money opinion for 2021 and raised issues at the time regarding bank and cash reconciliation. Now, as internal auditors back in 2021 and years prior to that, we were raising the same concerns about the control we had over bank rec. And keeping it in a very, very simple terms, we all have bank accounts, and every now and again you will look at your bank account statement and you will tick off and you will look at the money coming in and, more importantly, the money going out to make sure that you've got oversight of what's going in and out of your bank account. In very simple terms, that's really how sort of bank rec and cash reconciliations work. So looking at 23-24, because we're more obviously up to date than EY are, and we've now got EY, KPMG as our new external auditors. We found significant improvements have been made, reconciliations being monitored and regularly completed in a timely manner throughout the year. So that's a really good position to be at. And I know Mark will compliment his team, but a lot of this are the controls and measures that Mark has personally brought in when he started here at Reading. And he's got a lot of oversight now on some of the feeder system reconciliations. And that, again, is really, really positive. So we're in a far better position. So when KPMG are looking at the 23-24 accounts, I do not expect them to raise any concerns about bank and cash reconciliations. The other positive area was the public health grants. A lot of work has taken place in improving systems and processes around the overall governance and monitoring of the public health grant expenditure. That's good. Where we've got limited assurance opinion. Now, when we do an audit, it's a snapshot moment in time. So at the time, we're raising these issues. And now, at this moment in time, they could all very well be addressed. So at the time when we looked at the coroner's service, we were reporting weaknesses with the governance and decision-making progress. There was an old SLA between the 6 Berkshire authorities. I think it was 10+ years old. It lacked clarity, equity, particularly around the apportionment of costs of a greater liability allocated to revenue accounts. I'm sure Mr. Carter, as the Director of Finance, will be able to give you assurance that the Berkshire Treasurers are working or have worked on that and made steps to address this going forward. The other area where we gave a limited assurance is the community infrastructure levy. What we were concerned about was the local processes. So although this is all governed by national legislation, we were concerned about the local processes in terms of how they're documented and the reliance on a single individual, which is a single point of failure in the process. So yeah, we made recommendations to hopefully address that. In terms of the advisory reviews, we looked at Section 117 of the Mental Health Act and procurement services. Now, this is where we haven't given an assurance opinion because there's many sort of complex and detailed project streams at the moment. So we're working with them to do like a midpoint audit as such, to make recommendations so they can build it into their process. But we will come back and do a full review at a later time. In terms of grant certification, we signed off the library's improvement fund grant, no problem there. And in the detail in Appendix 1, you'll see where we are with the audit plans. We're at the end of the financial year now. There are a few audits which will carry over into April and a couple which will now take place in this financial year's audit plan. And the last 2 pages of Appendix 1 just gives you the detail of the investigations, which the corporate investigations team been doing over the past 12 months. Any questions?
Councillor Yeo.
Hi, thank you. We nearly always have some sort of question on the audit. It's the just going back to the seal report. I think that as councillors, probably the only thing that not the only thing that we're concerned about, but one thing that we'd be concerned about is it talked about the delays in receiving the money. Now, just some clarification that we wouldn't, that the council wouldn't actually lose the money. It's just delayed, and then it affects reconciling accounts and such, rather than, so the money's still there to be collected, and eventually we get it, basically.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. That is the case.
Any other comments or questions, members?
Just assume that whoever had suggested the audit of the coroner service obviously made a good suggestion.
Yeah, that was the AD for that area. Yeah.
Okay, so we're happy to accept the recommended actions. The Audit and Governance Committee requested to consider note the report from. Noted. Move on to item 7. Implementation of audit recommendations tracker. Charlie.
So this, councillors, as always, is the tracker for those audits that have already been done. It gives you an up-to-date picture. As you remember, it's limited and no assurance types of audits that we've talked about before. Just a few things to note. The details, of course, are there. We did a big push back end of this last year and this year into clearing down recommendations. There was a lot of work done because a lot of recommendations had been actually cleared. Officers were just, if you like, being over optimistic as to actually then recording and then cleared. And there are many reasons for that, which I don't go into necessarily. Anyway, a lot of them have been cleared down. The other thing we did a lot of work on is, okay, if you haven't cleared it, apart from giving a reason as to why and what work you're doing on, what is the estimated date that you will now be coming to clear that? And you'll see that some of them are in the narrative, some of them are actually being revised dates. The revised dates have been discussed, of course, within ADs with directors, so that we have a senior officer level agreement that that is a now date. So just to note that. Now, in future, we'll try and break out those that have been their due date from those that are still within date, because of course we record all of this to give you a better picture and a feel for, actually, because it's the ones that are beyond their due date that we should really be focusing upon. The other thing we'll do is we'll put in, I'm trying to work out how exactly to do this, the original officer's remarks regarding the audit recommendation. So what you see at the moment is the audit recommendation on the latest update. You don't see the officer's remarks, because there are some where, although the audit may have recommended you do X and Y, that in discussions actually X is a good thing to do, but Y maybe should be P or Q. And it was slightly changed, and we don't necessarily see that nuance. So it's useful to see the original recommendations from the officer as well, and which was accepted part of the audit. So that will be for next time. Just to note, if you actually look at the detail, just to kind of do a bit of summary for those that are overdue at the moment, it's interesting that they either tend to relate to a project, well, they're all project related, but it's a project of the implementation of a system. So you'll see E5, which of course was successfully implemented not that long ago. There's now work to do because we needed that implemented before certain things could happen, and that now work is happening, and therefore we will clear those audit recommendations as soon as we're done. We are awaiting the implementation of housing's new system, the NEC system. It's a trial in itself, and it's still a trial for all of us. That is needed to clear down some of the housing recommendations and related ones as well. And for specifically a couple of the ones that are related to adult services, there's a Mosaic update happening. That's Mosaic is their system, which happens fairly soon, and we need that doing to clear something down. So some of them are related to IT systems implementations. There's one related to the housing repairs. Has also got some related to the project, which is ongoing at this moment in time. In fact, Darren just before this meeting was at the update meeting as well. Oh, of course, there are members there as well, so you probably know better than I. That will then close some of the housing recommendations down. So just to say, big push on closing recommendations down and seeing and getting the true picture of where we are, and making sure officers are held to account with dates as well as actions that they're doing. So hopefully it's an improvement on last time.
Thanks, Charlie. Councillor Robertson.
There's probably a very easy answer to this question, at least I hope so. Page 84, I remember from a previous audit and governance meeting, we touched on cyber security. Now, in a few of these, we've got all of the status March 24 shows as complete. Yet, if you look at the wording in the responsible officer latest update, especially on the one where it says there needs to be close monitoring of the cybersecurity training to ensure that all staff have been trained and that the training has been regularly refreshed. In the update, it says policy for the enforcement of mandatory training was agreed on the 16th of January. Officers are currently working through the way in which the policy will be operationalized. That doesn't sound like it's a complete action in my book, in terms of, you know, complete means that it's there, it's working, and everything's fine. This looks like there is further work to be done in terms of, we've got a policy, now how do we implement it properly? And that's what I would argue with calling that a complete action. That's all. Okay. And it's the same for a few others on that page, but I just chose that one.
Thank you, Councillor Robertson.
Right, yes, good spot, if you like. The action that is operationalising it is, in effect, has been done. So there was a report taken to CMT on the 16th of January, it says there, that suggested the policy that we went forward with. That was agreed. HR have got that, and in fact, it's being rolled out right now. The first quarter, so we broke down into quarters mandatory training, redefined what is mandatory and what the requirements of that mandatory training were, of which cyber and information governance were the first ones that were up. Those programs, sorry, the training was revised to bring it up to date and make sure that it covers all the aspects that were needed. That's being done. And then the rollout of that, actually going out and getting officers to do it, is the flick of a button, which is being done right now, this instant in time. The wording hasn't caught up with that particular bit, but since that's particularly my area, I did make sure that the completion was noted. If nothing else, my apologies that the wording wasn't kept up with that. You can give me a black mark for that. And Vicky, I do need to make sure that wording picks up with it later on.
Do we have any other questions for, since Darren, did you indicate to comment? Okay.
Oh, I'm fine.
Okay, we'll move on then to the recommended action to notice report. Everyone happy to notice report? Yep. Okay, so now internal audit plan 2024-2025, and that's going to be Paul.
Thank you, Chair. So this is the internal audit plan for this financial year, and it sets out the work that the internal audit team plans to undertake in the financial year 24-25. So as part of building this plan, I meet with directors, ADs, senior managers. I review risk registers, the strategic one, director ones, operational risk registers, and I populate what I call the audit universe. So it's effectively every activity, system, process that we could audit. I put it all together and then I undertake a risk assessment, trying to figure out what's important, what do I need to focus on first, and then I look at the resources I've got available and I compile an audit plan. So it's my responsibility to provide an annual opinion on the council's control environment. And in the context of the public sector internal audit standards, opinion does not simply mean view, comment or observation. It means that internal audit will have done sufficient evidence work to form that conclusions. So the attached plan in Appendix 1 will allow for the effective discharge of this responsibility. So if you could go to Appendix 1, what I've done is I've given you the title of the audit, the risks context, the planned, the brief summary of the planned internal audit coverage. Obviously, when the audit comes around, we will build upon that, and then the planned timing of each audit. You will see you'll see some red text saying in brackets of some of the audits follow-up review. So where Charlie was talking about the recommendations follow-up, as auditors, we will go back and follow up limited or negative assurance reviews. So where we've had concerns in the past, we will go back and follow up. So I've just flagged up those areas that we will be following up over the next 12 months. As part of the public sector regulations, and also in the terms of reference for this committee must approve the audit plan. You can't direct it. You can obviously have comments or inform me of concerns that you may have, but yeah, we're asking that the Audit and Governance Committee approves the plan for the period April 24 to March 25.
Thank you, Paul. Any comments from members? Questions for Paul? No? Are we happy to approve the plan? Seems quite comprehensive to me. There's an awful lot of audits on there. You're going to be busy. Those dates at the end there, are they the end date? Is that the date when the audit will start or when the audit will finish?
It's planned. It's what we plan to start the audit. So we'll be in that quarter.
In that quarter?
Yeah.
Okay. So members happy to approve the plan? Yeah. Okay, that's good. We'll move on to the next item. Item 9, Strategic Risk Register, April 2024. And we have Robin.
No, Vicky.
Robin's not here.
Unfortunately, Robin can't make it tonight.
Okay.
So I'm going to be presenting the strategic risk register for Q4 into Q1 for next financial year. You'll see you've got the strategic risk register in front of you, and it can be seen that we've got the same 11 risks as we had on the register for the last quarter. No new risks have been introduced. This strategic risk register was approved at the corporate management team on the 19th of March. On there, you will see that the 5 red risks remain the same. 4 of them have had no change, so the scoring has remained the same, the risk scoring, which were cyber, the special educational needs, safeguarding of vulnerable adults and children, and then failure to deliver zero carbon commitments. However, you will note that there has been a change with reference to the delivering balanced budget, and that's the inherent risk, the inherent likelihood rating has increased for Q4. And that's because of the increased budget pressures that are being reported by Brighter Futures. However, positive is that Darren and co, yet again, have been mitigating the risk in terms of real factors, real terms, and has been factored into the balanced budget for 24-25. So they've already factored in that increased risk, which is great news for the council. You will see within the risk register that quantitative data is now being recorded within the background context box, where information can now be reported in this format. The other change that I'd like to just highlight to you is that we've introduced a new section, very subtle and very small, but you'll see just above the specific actions required box, there is a new tab there, or a new piece of information, which is about risk status. We've asked all the risk owners to identify the risk status for each of their cards. So this is part of the activity that we're undertaking to introduce the concept of risk appetite throughout the council, which is going to be progressed over the next year across the organisation. So what this actually requires is that the risk owners determine how they plan to continue to manage the risk over the next periods, and we've broken it down into some really clear categories, and this follows national guidance. So they've got several options. The first one is to treat the risk. So that means that they're going to agree to continue to implement further controls to change the nature of that risk. Their second option is to be able to tolerate the risk. And that is that they're agreeing to accept the risk at the current level that it's at, which will mean no further risk or mitigation being implemented, but it will continue to be monitored to see the impact of that. The third option will be to transfer the risk, which is basically looking about how we can manage that risk by either passing it to a contractor or by purchasing specialist insurance and things like that to cover the risk, or to terminate the risk. So deciding not to take any further action and actually stopping the activity because we've identified that it could be too high a risk for the council to take. There are also 2 further options, which will be to escalate and de-escalate the risk between different registers that we've got in the council, which are obviously the strategic, the directorate, down to service teams and project risks. So it must be appreciated that at any point in time, risks can change between each of those categories. But also the process of risk management is determining whether we want to spend more money, more time, resources on something, and that is part of the risk management decision process that we have to go through. So this has now been launched across all of the risk cards that we own. In terms of our next steps for the next quarter, what we're going to actually be doing following discussions at CMT is about ensuring that the scoring of our residual risks are actually being consistent. Because what we've noticed is that there are some assumptions about the controls that are going to be put into place being accounted for in some of the risk ratings. So we're going to do some work in relation to ensuring that's more consistent through communications, training and support from the risk management team, so that we can get that consistency of reporting, so you know where we're actually based on the risk ratings for each of those cards. Any questions?
Councillor Robinson?
I think this is probably going to be a very stupid question on my behalf, but risks are elements that haven't taken place and you mitigate to stop that actually hitting the fan. Do we have a strategic issues register where the risk has turned into an event that's happening, and how do we control it in that respect? So it was just that, you know, I'm used to the world of risks and issues as opposed to just a risk register on its own.
Yeah, so we haven't got the issues at strategic level. We do manage that at project level lower down,
Right.
but not at the strategic level, because actually they are day-to-day issues, are day-to-day operational things that the managers pick up as part of their day-to-day work and manage it through the normal management process rather than highlighting it as a risk
Okay,
for a register.
thank you.
Any further questions? No further questions? Thank you very much. Okay, so members, are we happy to note this report and the recommended action? Thank you. Okay. Item 10. Oh, sorry, item 11.
No, 10.
Yes, item 10. SIP for Financial Management Code. And that's Stuart.
Thank you, Chair. So this report sets out the council's self-assessment of how it complies with SIPF's Financial Management Code that was implemented from April 2021. The self-assessment for 23-24 has identified progress in a number of areas. So the external audit of the 1920 statement of accounts gave an unqualified opinion for the first time since 2015-16. At the time of writing the report, the audit for 2021 was still pending, but with an expectation of an unqualified opinion. And I'm very pleased that you heard earlier tonight that that has now been confirmed. You also heard earlier that 21-22 and 22-23 draft statement of accounts have now been published. The capital strategy was extended from 3 years to 5 years as part of the budget report approved in February. And we had a 75% increase in the number of responses to the council's budget engagement exercise that ran through December and January. The most recent complete external value for money assessment is for 2021. You heard Maria mention that earlier. Where appropriate, this self-assessment for 23-24 has an increased focus on more relevant and timely evidence. So, for example, it takes into account the improvements recognised by the focused visit from Ofsted in September 2023 and the 21-22 and 22-23 internal audit assurance reports that were taken to audit governance. They gave an opinion of reasonable assurance. So as a result of those aforementioned improvements, this self-assessment has identified that 4 standards, A, D, L and P, have improved from a previous rating of amber to green. All other standards have remained unchanged from the 22-23 assessment. So in total, we've got 12 standards now rated as green, 5 as amber and 0 as red. And we anticipate making further improvements during the current year and reporting more progress to the committee next April.
It's good progress, I think. Any questions from members? Happy to accept the recommended actions. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Okay. 10, 11. Treasury Management Review Q3 and Stuart again.
Thank you, Chair. So the purpose of this report is to update Council's Treasury Management activities for the quarter ended 31st of December 2023. Bank of England interest rate remained at 5.25% during the period, and it was confirmed again frozen at that level in the March Bank of England monetary policy meeting. The Council's Treasury Management advisors have provided us with their forecast on future interest rate changes. Those are set out in table 1 of the report and projects gradual reductions from midway through the current financial year. The council is forecasting positive variance of £675,000 on its investment income budget. That's mainly due to interest rate rises occurring since the 23-24 budget was set in February 2023. and also a 1.973 million positive variance on interest payable, which is primarily due to the approved reprogramming of the council's capital programme, therefore resulting in less borrowing need to be taken. Those variances have been reported to the Policy Committee in March as part of the Q3 Performance and Monitoring Report. The council remains significantly under borrowed against its capital financing requirements and is continuing to follow the approved borrowing strategy of deferring any potential long-term borrowing whilst those interest rates remain high, and is utilising short or temporary borrowing from the local authority market as required. The council's loan debt and investment portfolios are attached as appendices 2 and 3 to the report, and the council continues to operate within all of its treasury indicators and none were breached during the period. Thank you.
Questions? Stuart? No, no questions. I don't know if I've got one now. It's about the capital programme. You know, we had an original budget and a revised budget, and obviously the revised budget is a lot less than the original budget. Is that just because we don't need its capital anymore, or we don't? Sorry, we don't have to make those capital purchases anymore, or we don't anticipate that.
It's primarily that the capital programme board did a full review of the capital programme during the year.
I see.
And has realigned the budgets across financial years as appropriate. So in most cases, the budget will have been moved into future years to reflect the delivery of those schemes.
Okay. All right. Yeah. So it's just that it gave us a positive variance from what was originally budgeted that you got at one point.
Yeah. So we would have originally assumed borrowing based on the original capital programme. The fact it's now being put into future years, therefore we need to borrow less in the current year, and therefore we get the benefit of that in the current year.
Okay. Yeah. Cool. Thanks for that, Stuart. Recommended actions. You all in agreement?
Yeah.
Okay, now into item 12. Super. Information Government's quarterly update.
That's me, Chair. Thank you.
Michael.
Some news to draw out from this report. First, in relation to the subject access requests, the long-standing backlog of requests, as you'll see, has gone down, which is good news. So that the Reading cases from the backlog years of 2020 through to 23 have been completed. So that's excellent news. Just 4 of the backlog cases then remaining for the brighter future cases. But the other thing that the team is reporting is they're seeing an uplift in some of the subject access requests. So it's good news that we've got the software implementation in train so that we will be able to try and deal with those more promptly and avoid having complaints from customers about access to their information. I have to say, it's not reported anyway, but we get remarkably few complaints. Customers are very patient about getting their information from us, but we do want to comply with the 30 days, which is why we're trying to make sure that we've got the systems upgraded so that we can do that and not only not have backlogs, but have timely responses to requests so that people get their information promptly. So that's some good news. The FOIs, as you will see, have slipped, which is disappointing. And although in the last couple of audit and governance committees, I've been able to report some green shoots and highlights where we had response rates in the 80s and 90% with some departments, that's now fallen back. And I'm not really sure why that is. And that's subject to further work, which we're doing in the team. We are also working on the global system in relation to how FOIs are progressed throughout the council. That's part of the customer and casework management system, and that implementation should be due in July to give us that sort of stronger basis on which to push the work through and follow it up in all departments of the council. So that may make a difference, but equally there may be some other issue which we need to uncover, because we've talked before about the way in which perhaps there are cultural issues, and we've investigated that, whether or not there are work pressure issues, and we've looked at that. And we do have now a sort of coherent group of primary responders to FOIs. So we do have a group of people that we can work with. So we will regroup with those and try and understand why some of these rates are slipping. You'll see in some of the departments, they've had fairly low numbers of FOIs to respond to on a month-by-month basis. And even so, some of the percentage response rates aren't as great as they could be. So there's clearly some further work to do. Just picking out something else to draw to your attention in paragraph 4.6, because it was something which had come up at previous audit and governance committees. The committee was always very keen to make sure that our data transparency pages, which were out of date at one point, remain up to date. And one element of that has slipped, but actions are in hand to bring that up to date. And we've been checking today, and we expect that work will actually be in place faster than is given in the report. So we hope that will be in place within the next couple of weeks to bring the procurement data up to date. Just to also mention that the work on the information management strategy is progressing well. That's been followed up in the Information Governance Board. And we've also been reviewing in the Information Governance Board how we can produce a dashboard for you in the Audit and Governance Committee, so that you'll be able to see where that progress is happening and how fast it is happening. So we've been reviewing some of the data which is coming through from all the different strands and work streams in the information management strategy. And we've also talked a little bit about cybersecurity training, which was in relation to the audit tracker, and just to add some further detail to that, particularly the key thing to do with all the mandatory training is to ensure that we've got good systems for monitoring in there. That has been something which was first picked up in the Audit and Governance Committee a couple of years ago, and we tried a number of different ways to get the reporting comprehensive and across the council and timely. That really has been addressed now by colleagues in the Directorate who have put together these Power BI suites. We've got now live reporting. So the work that Charlie was talking about is extending all of that work we were using to do for the Power BI monitoring on cyber and data protection across all the other bits of mandatory training, and then making sure that we've got a good eye over all of the mandatory training. But as Charlie also reported, we've got the new mandatory learning modules coming through, and we'll be pushing those first, so that we will check how that updated training is going down. That's all I wanted to say.
Thank you, Mike. Any questions for Mike? Ben?
I think you sort of alluded to it already in your comments, but obviously the FOI breakdown for Brighter Futures for Children is not great. And I think it'd just be good, because obviously you mentioned that they're getting better at the subject access requests. Do you think that has had an effect on the FOIs, or do you think that that's something different?
I think it's something different. The subject access requests are dealt with in my team centrally in the information governance team. So that's something we do on behalf of Brighter Futures. They have provided some resource some extra resource to help us get through those SARs, but I don't think the two things are connected. There's something else happening in relation to FOIs that we need to uncover.
And you don't think that, are we getting closer to, like, are you confident that the steps you outlined will we see some uptake in them?
Well, every time I come into Audit and Governance Committee and say we're trying something new, I remain disappointed by the fact that the rate is stubbornly low. And we took a number of actions in the last year, had an action plan and saw an improvement, and that got us off the radar of the Information Commissioner, but we don't want to be back on his radar. Not everybody publishes their FOI data. Central government departments do. A lot of local government departments don't. But because we had, thanks to Mr. Harrington's audit, spotted the fact that FOI was an issue in Reading. We've been monitoring it in the Audit and Governance Committee. So we'd come through our own confessional, we had come to the attention of the Information Commissioner. So we can't go back there. We have to keep on top of it and understand why we can't do this and how we can actually get it up to, you know, the 90% mark, because that's what we put in our corporate priorities, that we would get 90%.
Councillor Robinson.
Yeah, I was just, I note that in 3.3, the implementation of the redaction software is progressing. Obviously, within FOI, sometimes one has to provide documentation that may have other information in it to which the, so is redaction at present a manual process within the team?
Yeah, it's a manual process at the minute with Adobe Acrobat.
Okay.
Yeah, so this solution automates the bulk of the redaction. And that's mainly to be deployed in subject access requests where there's far more third-party information, as you would imagine, on something like historical social services cases or in relation to current housing cases. So that's where the bulk of the time and the manpower is going.
Yeah.
It will, of course, help in FOIs, but I don't think that the redaction element for the answers on FOIs is holding things up. It will be a marginal issue.
Councillor Giddings.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, it's clearly quite a complex area, this, which is probably sometimes quite difficult to sort of put into report because it seems to me you're slightly scratching your head as to how you can catch up. Because I was going to ask two questions. A, do you think you've got enough resources? And also, we seem to be dealing with Brighter Futures as well, although they're a sort of arm's length organisation, which I'm sort of slightly scratching my head over. And the other is, I think when we had the issues with freedom of information, and look, I come from a journalistic background, a lot of the requests were from the media. So there's another question, has that balance changed, or are these members of the public? I mean, because some of the media things are often a blanket thing, like the BBC does an investigation and asks all local authorities about X, and that's fine, that's their job. But I just wonder what the balance of these are as well. So have we got enough resources, and what's the balance of the?
Well, we do check these weekly, and we do have a sort of an eyes on them through the corporate management team and with the leader and deputy leader, just to pick out anything which we think is sensitive or interesting that we want to look at before it goes. And so in that review, it's only anecdotal. I can't give you any kind of statistical evidence because we haven't broken it down like that, and the system wouldn't allow us to record it. I think there are very few media ones. They are there, but they're few and far between. The number of requests that we get from vendors and potential suppliers seems to have decreased from what it used to be a few years ago. It mostly now seems to be very random requests from members of the public. And it's difficult to detect any great trend or theme in some of those. They are really something quite random.
It's more difficult to.
Well,
you can throw a resource at it, but necessarily improve your figures.
Well, one of the benefits we'll have with the new system is that we will be able to categorise cases and tag them and find some data and try and track that. But we don't have that ability at the minute.
So that might help.
It might help us. We do constantly encourage services, if they have data sets which they're being asked for frequently, to give us access to the data set and allow us to publish it on the transparency pages rather than pestering them for FOIs on a frequent basis. So that's again something which we'll go back and look at. But you can see we've done, if you look at the figures where it says FOI team have answered, that really is those are the common data sets where the team have been able to spot that we've got the data already and it's published. And what they're basically doing is fishing it out of the system and saying, well, the data's already published, so there it is, and the FOI case is closed. That's why they're 100%. It's because they're very easy ones to answer. But that's what we'd like to do, is get as many easy issues identified and on the web.
Any other questions, Mike? Okay, well, I've just got an observation, page 174, paragraph 3.3. It's kind of related to what Councillor Robinson mentioned about the redaction software, because I'm sure I've read this similar line in the previous audit guide. Yeah. So I'm just wondering what the, what are the main issues?
It has been slower than we anticipated. My reading of it was that the supplier who won the contract didn't have the right resource to be able to implement as quickly as we all wanted, and so was padding it out a bit. But we have persisted and pressed on with it. It's a good system. We now see other councils going for the same system. It involves an element of AI, so we think it's sort of fit for the future, that it will be able to learn and help and develop and make us work better and faster in the future.
AI to answer all the questions.
Well, that's ChatGPT.
It's got to help us a lot at least. Anyway, are members happy to note the report? And we move on to, that's the last item.
Yeah.
We move on to the end.
So we move on to the end. Well, thank everybody for coming, and again, congratulations, and for all your hard work, and much appreciated. Thank you everybody for coming.
So the following years, you just write on the back of a fag packet that just gets signed off, and that'll be fine. It says the government.
Wait till the recording stop.
It's not going out.